Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for the Acolyte episode 4. So of course, it kept going. It was boring again. I will say, the visuals for this episode I thought were great. I liked the actual planet itself. Unfortunately, the visuals were tied around an episode where it was a point A to point B episode where both halves of the story literally just went from point A to point B. And by the time they got to point B, which of course was getting to the Wookiee house, it just ends, as it does. And it literally, man, this is the one where, and if you watch my last review, I mentioned this before, and I mentioned it in the first two episodes. The endings to these episodes are not good. I think the third one probably had the best ending where it was like, oh, they show May like going to the tree at the end of the episode, and then it's like, oh, you know, she's alive or whatever, which would have been a reveal had it been the first episode. But talk about all that in that review if you guys want to check that one out. And this one, and I checked the time too. I checked the time. I was like, I have 9 minutes left, and I was like, they're gonna go there. They're gonna show up. It is gonna be the scene from the trailer where they all light their lightsabers and then get blown back. And then right when it's about to be an entertaining episode, it's going to end. And that's exactly what happened. They did have a great shot. I did like the Jedi like slowly floating down, and it's like, okay, you know, it's a flying Jedi, or Sith is rare to see, so that's powerful. And then of course, you know, a bunch of Jedi rush in, boom, get blasted away, Force Unleashed style, which looks really cool, but is also really rare. So we'll see how that pans out. Other than that, the whole episode was just like, okay, they had a little couple of moments here and there. It's like, all right, May is talking about having to, you know, actually end up turning herself in. It's like, all right, well, that's a twist. They wrote themselves out of that one, I will say, because I was like, how are they going to do this Wookiee thing? How is she going to fight a Wookiee Jedi without a lightsaber? The whole thing is supposed to be, you know, don't use a weapon, which apparently she never did. I didn't even think about that, the Endara thing with her using the blades. I thought that was still like in line with that mission, but it was like, no, she still technically used a weapon. So I guess she's literally supposed to be completely like hand-to-hand combat. I'm like, you know, even with a bunch of kunais, like, you know, I mean, it's still a Force user. They don't have to use the lightsaber to dodge that. They can just be like, I don't want those to hit me, and just wave them away, unless they're distracted, of course, like the first episode. So I was already waiting for that one, because I'm like, man, how do you go up against a Wookiee? That's crazy. A Force sensitive Wookiee, like a full-on Jedi, not even just like a Force sensitive, like a full-on Jedi Wookiee. How do you do it? You don't. You're just like, yeah, I'm do, and I'm just gonna turn myself in. I've changed my mind. My sister's alive. It made sense in her regard. You know, she was mad all the time, and it's like, man, I got a glimmer of hope. My sister was there. I can just go to her. Simple. Her sister did not care, because her sister, and I kind of understand partially, because it's like, you know, of course, going to the flashback, which was still only one perspective. Although I heard episode 5 was supposed to be the other half of the story, like the whole truth and everything. I'm sure that's a part of where Soul is going to be like, you know, I'll tell you once we get your sister, I'll tell you everything. But I can kind of see where Osha's coming from, where it's like, you know, hey, my sister tried to kill me a long time ago, killed my whole family. That's why everyone's dead, because of my sister. And it's like, despite that resentment and attachment, you know, kind of that combination of things, and that's what, you know, took her away from allowing her to be a Jedi. I was like, yeah, I'm just done. I'm gonna leave. She's like, she's out. And I thought that was kind of funny. And I'm like, okay. She was just gonna leave. She was like, I'm done. I'm not a Jedi. That's not my problem. I'm gone. Like, she's in this weird space where she didn't want to face it. And they even talk about it later, and it was like, okay, she was just going to take off and kind of not even bother attempting to solve that problem on both ends. Like, even, you know, regardless of whether or not it was trying to save her sister, but even dealing with her own issues of that, she was like, I'm out. I'm just going to leave it alone. And it was like, no, you kind of have to deal with this in a couple of regards. You probably should save your sister if it's possible, of course. But, you know, was the guy, he was like, you know, Soul probably brought you here not just to face your sister, but to also face your past. Like, you have to, you know, overcome your hurdles and stuff like that. So I thought that was interesting. And it was like, okay, you know, they have that dynamic of the sisters, one sister, you know, the good sister, of course, being like, I don't want to deal with it, but she has to. And then the darker sister, who's just been in the path of just bad, and kill, and all this revenge. And then it's like, dang, I have a glimmer of hope. And, you know, of course, going through the last episode, it's like, hey, the whole thing was, her whole attachment was her sister. And it kind of makes sense for her too, to just be like, screw this. Like, I got my sister. That was really all I ever wanted anyway. And I was mad they took that from me. And then it turns out that didn't actually happen. So I can just go be with her somehow, you know, because she was definitely, the dude was right. He was like, so you're just going to turn yourself in? Like, you really think that's going to work? after you kill 2 Jedi, you think you can just go in and be with your sister, and it's like, I'll figure it out. Like, she just wanted to be with her sister. That's how hardcore she loves her sister. And it's like, that's nice, but you know, he does have a point. You might want to think a little bit. You've already been on this revenge for so long, and you kind of did the revenge twice. One guy killed himself, so you know, you can have an out. You're like, technically, I just told him to do it and he did it. He didn't have to listen to me. You know, he's a Jedi Master at 16 or something. It's weird. The timeline's weird. We should talk about timelines. We should talk about that. Aside from all the boring stuff and like, you know, the small snippets of the actual character development, we do have the crazy thing, which I'm glad I watched the review, because I wouldn't have known this. I would have thought, like most people, when you watch the episode, you're just like, oh, that looks like that other character. Like, oh, that's that species. I didn't think that was Ki-Adi-Mundi. I'm just like, oh, that kind of looks like the dude from episode 1. That's all I thought. I think like most people, it's just like, oh, they, you know, kind of a reference. You show anything, you show a Zabrak, is like, oh, I'm gonna think Darth Maul, but you know, you show the horns. That's what I think. It's like, oh, that's cool. You show a Wookiee, it's like, oh, that's cool. It's a Wookiee. You show whatever Ki-Adi-Mundi species is, I'll be like, oh, you know, big heads. You know, that's a dude on the council. You show Plo Koon, I think that was Plo Koon. I don't know. Whenever it's him, I'm just like, no, that's him. That's Plo Koon. He was skinny and stuff. I'm like, I think that was a young Plo Koon. I'm gonna go with that was him. But that was actually Ki-Adi-Mundi. And so we go back to episode 3, the whole thread and all that stuff. I mentioned in my review, I think it's just perspective. Everyone's like, it changed the lore of Star Wars, it changed the Force. And I'm like, it's just a random person saying it. We've had tons of people say their version of the Force. So for me, you know, from a certain point of view, that was just her idea of the Force. Just because she was cocky about it doesn't mean anything. That's what everyone does when it's their version. It's, you know, as a lot of people have mentioned, kind of like religion. Like you have your version and you always say your version is right. It doesn't mean it is. So that's all I thought. I wasn't concerned about them retconning anything. So I'm like, that's her explanation. It's just someone else saying what they believe the Force is. You can't do that when it's just flat out, nope, this is actually this character existing during this time. That changes a lot. And I don't know how you could write yourself out of this one, because they have a character who flat out says, and this was something that was already an issue before the show even started. Everybody's like, okay, you have this Acolyte, you have this, you know, the Acolyte being like the apprentice of a dark side user. We can't say Sith, because the whole thing is, well, the Sith have not existed. You know, the Jedi didn't know in any regard. The Sith had been around for like over 100 years or something like that. So how do you make that work when you have these characters? You can't call them Sith. They have to be called something else, or, and even this was said before the show came out, everybody just dies. And that's really it. And now you have a character that we know doesn't die, Ki-Adi-Mundi, which apparently, and you know, obviously legends and all that stuff, their species only live like 50 years. So it, like, in multiple ways, he shouldn't have been here. But that's super crazy. That one is just like, I don't know how you could possibly make that one make any sense. And then he kind of hit it, or, you know, his whole thing was like, oh, we should hide this from the High Council and stuff like that. And it's like, that one you can't get out of. There's no perspective or kind of looking at it this way or that way. It's like, he shouldn't be there, because for one, he shouldn't exist. He's not, it would be like Darth Maul showing up. Like, visually, that's amazing. Why is he here? That doesn't make any sense. Why is he showing up? That's why we didn't get that old Sith Star Wars game. George Lucas was like, hey, what if we just add this character? And it's like, well, that would literally change like the story and like the timeline of where this game takes place. And it was like, yeah, that's why we never got that Sith Star Wars game. You can look that up. That's a real thing. So they put him in there, and it's like, it's a weird thing to do too. It's like, all you had to do is look that, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, it's been said a lot, creators of this show not knowing Star Wars, but it's like, that's one of those really weird things where it's like, you didn't even have to make it him. Nobody would have cared. It would just be like, oh, that looks like Ki-Adi-Mundi. That's what like the whole reference is. Like, you just put characters that look like other characters, and it's like, they're like you only put that type of character in there because it references that other type of character. That's why that always happens. But to actually make it that character seems really odd. And I guess it was, you know, like I said, it was just a thing to be a reference to, like, hey, it's actually a young version of him. Like, during the literal High Republic era, which, not knowing the length of his species and stuff like that, that's one thing, which technically they could change that. And it's like, okay, you change how long his species lives, whatever. But it's definitely the element of the whole personality thing. And who knows, they could have like a single minute line in there somewhere down the line where they really do go in like episode 7 or 8, like the last 2 lines of the show could just be like, well, do we call them the Sith? No, they weren't a master and apprentice. And then it's like, that's how we get out of it. And that'll be their escape. It could literally be like that. And let's face it, with this show, I would not be shocked if they just did like no, we're just going to say it's not that. And then that's how they do it. It's like, that's our explanation why it doesn't break canon. It'll be like one line and it won't really make any sense, but they'll be like, that's why it makes sense. And that's just with the show. I genuinely believe they could have a line where it's the worst version of how you write yourself out of it. And that's how they write themselves out. And I'm not sure. I'm honestly, I would not be surprised if they did it where it was like, hey, we won't call them Sith because they still haven't yet. They haven't really even had the conversation. Like at this point, this is the first time they actually, saw the actual master. So they were kind of like, oh, is it? I think the first thing that woman said was it like a dark sector, like like a private, not private sector, whatever she said. But at first, a splinter. I think that's what it was. Like kind of like a dark splinter, where it would be like the Jedi, or like would it be something worse? And then it's like, a bunch of rumblings, and then it's like, well, hold on a second, because if we tell the High Council, they'll tell the Senate, and then that's a whole thing. Like we don't want to look bad, So the whole thing they're doing with the series is like, let's keep this a secret, and that's a big part of why the whole Ki-Adi-Mundi thing is just like, oh, well, that's probably not the best. If that's Plo Koon, also probably not, it would kind of do the same thing with him. He doesn't have a direct line where he's the one saying, well, there haven't been Sith in this, in this long. But still same premise where it's like he was there during that mission. So it'll be interesting to see how they try to write themselves out of this one, but definitely another boring episode, which is unfortunate. The part where Osha touches the bug on the tree, I was like, oh, that's interesting. They're all like bugs, and they killed it, and then that was about it. She had an interesting moment where she was like, I sensed that thing, and that's why I touched it. And then because I touched it, it woke up, and then that's what got it killed. And she felt bad about that. And then with the Padawan was just like, it's always an honor to see someone like retouching with the Force. Or I forgot exactly what she said. And I watched a review where someone mentioned they were referring to the bug dying and like joining the Force. And that, I don't know if that's what she meant, because it's funny that they thought it that way. And I was like, I thought she was talking about it was an honor to see someone like reconnecting with the Force. I thought she was talking about Osha like reconnecting with her abilities. But it does make sense, like with the way that the dialogue went. It was like, I guess she was probably talking about the bug. I guess in my head, I was like, it makes way more sense that she'd be like, it's an honor to see someone like retouching the Force, like tapping back into it. That's how I saw it. But when I look back at that little line, especially because how quick the exchange was, it was like, yeah, it could have been written differently, for it to be like, she could have flat out said like, despite the death of a being, it's still good that you're tapping back into the Force. It was an accident, and that's a part of, kind of understanding the Force, is that you can do things unintentionally that can do that. But that's not what happened. She really did just be like, it's an honor to see someone, getting in touch with the Force again. And I think that's why I thought she was talking specifically about Osha and not the thing dying. So I think it was something that she said where it felt like she specifically meant Osha. But even when she said that, I was like, that's a weird way to respond to her being like, I feel sad I got that creature kill. And then she was like, but you're getting touched into the Force, dude. That's pretty sweet. It's an honor to see that. So either way, it was weird. So even when I thought she was talking about Osha like tapping into the Force again, and it's like, it's an honor to see that from someone, even that's weird after she's just like, yeah, I got that creature killed. So if she was talking about the creature, it's super weird. And even if she was talking about Osha, it was super weird. I like either way, her response was just like instantly, honored to be with the Force though. Just either way, life just right over her head. So either she was kind of honoring the bug because it's joining the Force as it dies, or she was honoring Osha. Either one is weird. So I guess it doesn't actually matter. But that's really it. The Wookiee died. We didn't get to see anything. The Master was there. I would assume that it's the guy, but at the same time, it's possible the Master was already going to go there anyway, because it makes sense. They were already being followed by episode 2. And then it's like, all right, well, you were basically caught in some way, shape, it's the Master. They always know something. They got feelers out there, and they always get their intel. So it's possible that it was him, because that's what makes the most sense, because they're already on the planet and this and that. And that was the mission, but it's not a mission. It's impossible. All this other crap. So they're going to reveal it. They have to. I hope they reveal. I mean, we only got 3. Yeah. No. Oh, well, I guess we have 4, because the next one is 5. So we got like 4 episodes left. We'll see what happens. All I can do is hope that the lightsaber fight is good, because they ended this episode and I was like, this is so stupid. They didn't do much. They didn't do anything. I shouldn't say they didn't do much. They didn't do anything. They had like the characters talk a little bit about, you know, kind of what they want to do and their changes, but it could have been an hour-long episode. It should have been, honestly. Like, they don't do anything but go from point A to point B. They don't have like an action sequence. The dialogue that they have, where it's like the little character beats, aren't impactful enough to be a big deal. May's was the biggest one, because it was like, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and turn myself in. So she had the biggest one for sure, where it was literally, I'm just gonna, like, you know, submit myself to prison or whatever fate has in store for me because I did something wrong, but I can be with my sister. That was the biggest one. And May is going to have to confront her sister, deal with her past and all that stuff and how she feels. Soul revealed a little bit where he was like, once we get your sister, I'll tell you everything. So we'll probably get the answer from him directly, and we will probably get the reveal of exactly who the master actually is. If it's not the dude, because otherwise he's probably dead if he hasn't escaped, which I also assume he did, because everyone heard May screaming. So they all ran to that location. So when they got to like that little spot where, I think by the time they got to the spot where he was gone. I'm pretty sure it was the same location. He was gone. And that's when we get the scene where May trips in front of the little, in front of Basil, whatever, the scout, who took off, which was a dumb thing, where it's just like, okay, so they have a tracker that can't really be trusted and just takes off in the forest of like absolute death and despair, where the dude literally says, like, May's buddy straight up says that most of this planet is uncharted. Even bounty hunters don't really come here very often, because that's how dangerous it is. You got like these bugs on trees that, you know, pop out at nighttime, which I assume are going to come into play in the next episode, because now it's dark. And I thought that was kind of the whole reason why they were running so much, or May was like, hey, I need a break. And it was like, yeah, we don't really have time for that. I thought it was because the sun was coming down, and it's like, hey, once it gets dark, you got to do this. And then we either got to stay in his house or we need to get the F out of here. So we got to have some place to actually go. That's what I thought the whole point was of rushing. So now it's nighttime. I know they're going to do the Jedi fight, Jedi versus whatever, Sith, not Sith, dark side user. So I assume the bugs will come back into play. We'll see how all that pans out. We'll see if we get a conversation between May and Osha in the next episode. I assume we will, regardless of who lives and who dies. The Green Lady is in this fight, because she's the one who comes into the trailer and has like a special little moment. So more Jedi are going to show up during the next episode. So I'm curious how all of that's supposed to pan out, where they're going to bring more characters in to fight this person. I would assume the Jedi are already on their way, considering, unless the fight is just like a super long fight, I guess, I don't know, but we'll see. This episode was definitely kind of boring. They definitely screwed themselves with the Ki-Adi-Mundi thing. The only thing they can really do is just be like, hey, by the time we get next week's episode, it'll be changed up. They'll go in, they'll just be like, we'll just erase this, and it'll just be like some dude that looks like Ki-Adi-Mundi. That's the best they got. That's all they can do. Remember the dude in the pants who was in Mando season 2? And then it was like, now if you go back and watch that, they made sure they were just like, we're just gonna brush the guy right out. No muss, no fuss. He's done. So it's possible that that's what they'll do. It's possible that they'll just wait, like I said, until like episode 8 or something. And then it's like, yeah, they weren't actually Sith. And then that's their like BS one line away. That's how we get out of it. We didn't break canon. Poof. They're not Sith. When he says it in Phantom Menace, Sith haven't existed in this long. He's technically right. He doesn't have to bring up the dark side user. It's just like, that wasn't a Sith. We killed him anyway. Sith hasn't existed in millennia. So either they'll backtrack and just change it, or they'll have that one line. We'll see which way it goes, or it'll be nothing. I mean, it could just be a mistake. It could just be this. It could just be this, and they don't change anything. So either they don't have a line in there to kind of save their butts at the very last second that's already written, or they'll change it, or they'll just leave it. Because this is the one that I think, like I said, it's not really a perspective thing. That one is just like, you got one chance, and the only thing is to either change it or have like that random one line that's in there to be like, hey, these aren't actually Sith. They never were. But we'll see. Episode 5, it's a very unfortunate series. Like, the thing that sucks, I was hyped for this one. I think a lot of people were, because the whole thing was like, once again, it's called the Acolyte, but May is not the main character, and that really effing sucks. It is not dark side focused. It is the same as every other Star Wars thing, where the main focus is on Jedi and light side characters trying to stop a dark side character or figure something out with a dark side character. And that really sucks. That, I would say, is my biggest disappointment, where it's like, oh man, it doesn't even focus on May. It's not her show. It's called the Acolyte. She's the Acolyte, but Osha is the main character. Doesn't matter if May showed up first. Doesn't matter if they showed her first. She does not get as much focus. So it's unfortunate. We'll see what happens. We got 4 more to go. We shall see. But we'll let us know your thoughts on what is it, episode? Yeah, Acolyte episode 4. What you guys think is going to happen? I know there's some people enjoying it, and I'm glad that there are people actually enjoying the show. I just don't, because it's boring. And like I said, it's one of those things where you don't have to worry about any of the crap where people are talking about it being woke and this and that. It's just not a fun show. It's just boring. The show ends in super weird ways where it's like they ended like on a swing, and a lot of shows do it, and I don't know why it's different. It feels different with this show, but something about it was just like, man, it just felt like it seemed like it would have made more sense to just end on like the force push. But then they do the force push, and then it's like one extra little moment, and it's like, if it ended on the force push and you show someone flying towards the camera and then it ends, that I would have felt would have made more sense. But then it like goes to like another extra moment, and then you get like an extra swing or two in there, and then it ends. And it's like something about that, it feels weird. It feels like there's a little bit too much extra motion right when it ends. And it's like, all right, I knew it was gonna happen though, so I can't act like I'm surprised. It does really suck that it happens though in an episode where it's like you really could have cut out quite a bit to actually have the action in this episode, or better yet, just do 2 episodes together. I don't know why they didn't do that, as if it wouldn't be important. Like, it just seems weird. Like, they did it for Bad Batch, like 3 separate times. Bad Batch came out and it was like, hey, here's 2 episodes. They weren't always part 1 and part 2. Sometimes they just put 2 episodes out together that kind of just fit. And it's like, you know what would fit? Having the episode where they go to the planet, and then the end of that episode, the fight starts, and then you just have the other episode. I know there's only 8 episodes, so that's probably why they wouldn't do that, but you can. I mean, we're in the world of streaming. You can always just throw out like, there's 2 episodes, we're putting these 2 out together. They just feel like they fit the best. Just do that then. Because with especially, like I said, it just hits a lot harder with this show, with the way the episodes end so abruptly. It feels, it definitely fits better with this show. Like, you know, people always talk about it. People are making like 8-hour-long movies, and then you just cut at a random sequence, and it's like, that is how it feels. I rarely feel that. I always feel it with this show. The only time I didn't was the flashback episode, but that's only because the whole thing, like, regardless of where it ended, it was all contained within the flashback. So wherever it ends, it's kind of just like, that's going to be the ending no matter what. But excuse me, even that, I mentioned like it should have ended with like the emotional hug, and then that's where it cuts. But it's just we'll see. We got 4 more to go, so I'm hoping the action's good. That's the best I got. Like, that was kind of the best I had from episode 1 and 2. I was like, I hope the action is good. I hoped the review was good. We got half of it. Maybe the second half will be entertaining. I'm sure we'll find out next week. And then we still got 3 more after that. So I don't know who's going to live and who's going to die. I would be very shocked if everybody lived. And they can't. They just can't. But I'm curious. I'm just so curious. Like, more than anything, I just want to see how it ends. Not because I'm excited that it's going to be good. I wish I could say I feel like it will be. I can't. I want it to be. Of course, who doesn't? But I can't say I expect it to be good. But man, the curiosity is more for what are things going to be like by the time these 4 episodes finish. It's already bad, you know, for most people. People are like, just, this is the one. This is the one that's really, really doing it. For people to be like, that's it for Star Wars. This is really the one. You know, other ones were like the one. This is the one. So I'm excited for just the story of our world after this is all said and done within our little nerdy pocket dimension of Star Wars. So I'm excited for that, for sure, more than anything within the actual series. But I would love to know your thoughts on all things The Acolyte. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, thoughts, theories, all of that stuff for these next 4 episodes. And of course, thanks for watching.